Justice often depends on your bank balance. How money influences fairness. When we think about justice, we often imagine a fair and equal system, one where everyone is treated the same, regardless of their background or financial status. But the reality is that justice, in many cases, depends heavily on your bank balance. Today, we're going to explore how wealth can tilt the scales of justice. It's not just about paying for a lawyer, it's about how your financial status can determine whether you get a fair trial, whether you can afford bail, or even whether you can hire the right expert to defend you. In a world where inequality is rampant, the justice system should be the equalizer, right? But more often than not, it amplifies the differences between those with money and those without. From the courtroom to the police station, the wealth gap shapes how individuals experience justice, or lack thereof. As we delve into this topic, we'll examine how even the most basic facets of the legal system, from arrest to trial, are influenced by wealth. We'll look at real-world examples, draw wisdom from philosophy on fairness, and explore what can be done to address this deep-rooted inequality. Let's begin with a question we often overlook. Does justice really exist when only the wealthy can afford it? Understanding how money shapes justice. To understand the impact of wealth on justice, we need to first examine how the justice system is structured. Justice is meant to be impartial, based solely on the facts and the law. But in practice, the ability to access legal resources can make all the difference between being convicted or acquitted, between spending years in jail or walking free. When we think of a trial, we picture it as a fair and balanced process, two sides presenting their case to a judge or jury, and the truth emerging from the facts. However, the truth is, the more money you have, the more access to resources you have in this process. Legal representation. One of the biggest factors is legal representation. We've all heard the saying, everyone deserves a fair trial. But what does a fair trial really mean? For most people, it means having an experienced lawyer who understands the intricacies of the law, can build a strong defense, and knows how to navigate the complexities of the legal system. But not everyone has access to these kinds of resources. Those with money can afford to hire top-tier lawyers, lawyers with decades of experience, connections, and the ability to dedicate hours to building a robust defense. On the other hand, those who are financially disadvantaged often rely on public defenders who, due to overwhelming caseloads, may not have the time, resources, or support to provide the best possible defense. And this is just the beginning of the issue. In many cases, wealthy defendants are able to hire private investigators, expert witnesses, and forensic teams that can provide critical evidence to challenge the prosecution's case. These resources give them an unfair advantage in court. On the other hand, a poor defendant may struggle to afford a basic defense, let alone access these additional resources. Real-life example. Take the case of Michael Brown, a man who was arrested for a non-violent offense. He had no money for a private lawyer, so he was assigned a public defender. The defender, overwhelmed with dozens of other cases, didn't have the time to dig deeper into Michael's case, missing crucial evidence that could have led to a different outcome. Michael's case ended with a conviction that many believe could have been avoided had he had better legal representation. Now, imagine if Michael had the resources to hire a seasoned attorney. The case might have been entirely different. This is just one example of how wealth directly influences outcomes in the courtroom, turning justice into something that is often inaccessible to those without means. Bail and pretrial detention. Another area where money influences justice is bail. In the United States, and in many other countries, the concept of bail means that someone accused of a crime must pay a certain amount of money to be released from custody while they await trial. In theory, bail ensures that individuals will return to court for their trial. But in reality, it often serves as a financial barrier. For the wealthy, bail is just another expense to be paid. They can afford to pay whatever amount is required, walk free, and continue with their lives. However, for someone living paycheck to paycheck, the amount of bail required can be unattainable. They may remain incarcerated for weeks, months, or even longer, simply because they cannot afford to pay. Real-life example. Consider Shayna, a single mother who was arrested on charges related to a protest. The bail was set at $5,000. With no savings, Shayna was forced to remain in jail, separated from her children, unable to work and losing her job in the process. For her, the justice system was more about money than fairness. Had Shayna had access to wealth, her situation would have been entirely different. This disparity creates a two-tiered justice system, one for the wealthy who can afford to buy their freedom, and one for the poor who are trapped in a cycle of incarceration. Impact on mental health. We cannot ignore the psychological impact that being detained without bail can have. While the wealthy continue their lives, the financially disadvantaged are often subjected to increased stress, anxiety, and trauma while they await trial. This can impact their ability to participate fully in their defense and can affect the outcome of their case, as they may not be able to engage in the trial process with the same mental clarity or resources. The influence of wealth on verdicts and sentencing. So far, we've talked about how wealth influences the beginning stages of the justice process, how someone is treated when they're first arrested, and how they are represented in court. But wealth doesn't just affect the early stages of a trial, it impacts the very outcomes themselves. Public perception and media. One of the most subtle but powerful ways money impacts justice is through public perception and media coverage. Wealthy individuals, especially those who are famous or have high social status, tend to receive more sympathetic media coverage. Their cases often get attention from well-known lawyers, PR firms, and media outlets that spin their narrative in a way that portrays them in a more favorable light. In contrast, those without money rarely have the luxury of media attention. Their cases are often neglected or covered in a way that perpetuates negative stereotypes. For example, when a high-profile celebrity is accused of a crime, their wealth often allows them to settle the case out of court or receive a lenient sentence. Compare this to a poor individual who, without the ability to influence public opinion or hire top-tier representation, faces harsher judgment and more severe consequences. Real-life example. Take Loughlin, the famous actress involved in the college admissions scandal. She and other wealthy parents were able to afford top lawyers who negotiated for lighter sentences or even the ability to avoid jail time altogether. Meanwhile, lesser-known defendants who commit similar crimes without the resources to fight in the system end up facing longer sentences and harsher penalties. The wealth gap here doesn't just affect access to lawyers, it affects the very nature of how crimes are perceived and punished. Sentencing and the rich versus the poor. Even after a trial, wealth still plays a significant role in sentencing. Studies have shown that individuals with more money are often given lighter sentences for similar crimes compared to those without resources. The rich have the ability to hire private probation officers, attend rehabilitation programs that reduce sentencing, or even get house arrest instead of jail time. Those without wealth may not have access to these options and may end up serving a much harsher sentence. Real-life example. Consider the case of Brock Turner, the Stanford student convicted of sexual assault. He was sentenced to only 6 months in county jail after a highly publicized case that many argued was influenced by his wealth and social status. His affluent background, along with his parents' ability to afford a top defense team, contributed to a sentencing that many considered far too lenient for the severity of the crime. Overcoming the system and fighting for true justice. While it's true that wealth plays a significant role in determining how justice is dispensed, there are steps we can take to fight for fairness. So how can we, as individuals and as a society, challenge the system? Advocacy and awareness. One of the most powerful tools we have is advocacy. Advocacy can take many forms, whether it's supporting policies that promote legal aid and justice reform, volunteering for organizations that help the marginalized, or even just using your voice to raise awareness about the disparities in the system. Supporting candidates who are focused on reforming the justice system to make it more equitable for all is one way to initiate long-term change. Education and empowerment. Another way to fight the injustice caused by wealth inequality is through education and empowerment. When people understand their rights and the legal process, they are better equipped to navigate the system. This is why programs that teach financial literacy, legal rights, and personal advocacy are so important. They empower individuals to demand justice on their own terms. Finally, community solidarity is a powerful force. Communities working together to support those who have been wronged can make a significant impact. From organizing protests to providing financial support for legal fees, the collective power of communities can level the playing field, even if just a little. As we've seen today, justice often depends on your bank balance, but that doesn't mean it's a system that can't change. By recognizing the inherent inequalities, advocating for reforms, and empowering individuals with knowledge, we can create a fairer and more just society. If this video resonated with you, if you've seen the disparities firsthand or simply agree that justice should be accessible to all, please like this video and share it with those who need to hear it. Your support helps spread awareness about these important issues. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth discussions about how modern society works and how we can change it for the better. Together, we can continue to break down the barriers that keep justice out of reach for so many. Thank you for watching. Let's keep striving for a world where justice truly means justice for all, no matter how much money you have.